Okay, folks, today what we got is a little theory deep dive. Um, we can't actually, uh, the fact or fiction that we're deep diving on, we don't have because it was deleted.
Suspicious.
Why are you gonna just keep echoing me?
Ad libs, buddy.
Oh, okay, ad libs. Anyways, the theory that we have was from a fact or fiction video, but that will not be posted because it got lost in the sauce. You fucker.
We pay for this.
Anyways,
Yeah.
but the theory still stands as something that people believe. We're talking about the Mayans and the Egyptians. Yes, two classic ancient civilizations. Here's what we got. Ancient Mayans departed from Central America in search of other civilizations to learn from. They eventually reach the African continent and enter Egypt via the Mediterranean. That would be a very hard trip to take
Very hard.
via boat. You gotta be a skilled navigator for that. Anyways, they follow either branch of the Nile River that leads from the Mediterranean down into Giza, and they reach the pyramids. They're stunned by the architecture, and they build a little relationship with the Egyptians in order to trade knowledge in technical architecture. And then this part doesn't really matter, but it was in the video. They leave their mark of Mayan text in some catacombs and return to the Yucatan Peninsula with newfound skills and build their own pyramids. So the little markings was in the video, but we can't go over that because we don't have the video because it was deleted. They know we're onto something, so that's why they delete our evidence.
That's facts.
Mm-hmm.
That's right, Indiana.
Exactly.
Indy Jones.
Indiana Jones. Indiana Jones.
Indy 500.
So we're gonna have to establish some things first in order to even get into the theory, which is timelines and other things in order to know if it's even possible that this theory could take place. So starting with the Mayan timeline, they have, what is it? One, two.
Four.
They have four. Sorry, they have four little time periods that are known or said to be known. Everything's basically conjecture and hearsay. We got the pre-classic period, which starts in 2000 BC, leading all the way to the post-classic period, which is in 1511 AD. And I think we all know what happened after 1511 AD with the Mayans and the Spanish. Yeah. Measles.
Conquistador.
Yeah, conquistadors.
Conquistador.
And then
Spain
moving
without
on.
the S.
Pain. Mm-hmm.
Spain
Thank
won.
you. Thank you.
Mm-hmm. Anyways, going on to the Egyptian timeline, they have a much wider range of time period, starting from 11,000 BC, and this is what is accepted via history books and whatnot. And those are the first Nile Valley settlers, and we go all the way down to Roman and Byzantine rule during that ends in 642 AD. So they have over 11,600 years total where they are a civilization. Also, I'm not sure if this is 100% correct because they were under rule by the Macedonians from Alexander the Great and stuff like that during a certain period. So you could say that the Egyptians ended with that dynasty because it moves on to having rulers like Cleopatra, who was Greek, not Egyptian ethnically. So, I mean, you could say that it ended in 332 BC. But yeah, those are our main timelines.
All right. some things to take away from these timelines. The first pyramids in Egypt were supposedly built from as early as 2600 BC, which is far earlier than the first possible construction of Mayan pyramids. There is indeed an overlap of both civilizations in the infancy of Mayan civilization and part of the prime of ancient Egyptian civilization, 2000 BC to about 332 BC. Looking good on this theory so far, though.
Yatta!
Let's ask some questions.
Were the Mayans a seafaring people? Yes? Maybe. The Mayans were very affluent in trade and had made many ports for trade across Mesoamerica. These were also stories of Columbus bumping into some dugout boats of Mayans off the Honduran coast. The fact that they had ports and traded very well could point to them being fluent in sea travel. And there are also similarities in indigenous languages from Mayan and Taino culture, Caribbean islands, that would be, which would signal close relationships between the two cultures. The closest point, the closest point of boat travel would be from modern-day Mexico to Cuba, approximately 135 miles. The farthest they would have had possibly traveled would be from Mexico to Puerto Rico, approximately 2,000 miles. The distance by sea from Mexico to Egypt would be at the very least with the best navigational skills over 8,000 miles. Not to mention the boats used by the Mayans were dugouts, essentially hollow trees.
Another note to mention, the Spanish, when arriving in the Mayan lands, attributed the pyramids to ancient Egyptians or Atlanteans that made their way over to the Americas.
Theories of the Younger Dryas impact would also point to timelines of Egyptian pyramids being completely false. Rather, the true timeline includes a civilization that was far more advanced and was wiped out by a comet or other cataclysm. A small group of people with knowledge of pyramid building could have been the ancestor to Mayan, passing down sacred knowledge.
6 out of 7 continents have pyramids.
It's up for
So-
debate that the seventh does.
I was gonna say, but
Yeah,
pretty
that's
sure
true.
pretty sure the 7th does.
I was gonna bring that up as a little thing, but
Pretty sure the 7th does.
that's
but
just confirmed.
that's a speculation.
Just confirmed
Yeah.
6 out of the 7 continents, which is a lot, you know.
That's a Google Earth speculation right there.
Yeah. And I
all
mean, the reason I would say that having so many of those continents with pyramids would be significant is, why are they all building pyramids, and why are they all like astrologically inclined? Like, all of those civilizations have pretty much 2 things in common: mathematics via astrological science, and having pyramids. Why do they got that? All of them.
Yeah, it's
For
definitely
reference,
a good question.
Here's a picture of the Egyptian and Mesoamerican pyramids.
Yes.
I'm throwing it like a basketball into his hand.
Yeah. I'll do a little animation for that. Or actually,
you,
Steve
Mike.
will, our editor. Mike, sorry. Yeah,
Mike.
Mike, our editor, will.
Sorry, Mike.
Mm.
Throw yourself
You
in
mean
for
Anita.
a fraction.
Mm-hmm.
I needed more mics.
Mm-hmm. Mike,
I
cut
need a
that up
Max
with
Ween.
scissors and throw it in Bryson's hand, please.
Anita Maxween.
Anita Maxween. But yeah, I mean, there's a lot to think about when talking about this theory. I mean, what do you guys think?
I think it's pretty crazy that there's pyramids in 6 out of the 7 confirmed continents, but most likely all of them.
Mm-hmm.
Like, what is the deeper purpose that we aren't understanding?
Yeah. Exactly.
You know, like we can make theories, we can do all this stuff, you know, they line up with the sun, they line up with the stars, you know, all that stuff, they're mathematically correct. But what's the actual deeper meaning for what they are? You know?
Mm-hmm.
And why? I mean, there is variation of, like, the pyramid. It's not all just, you know, a pyramid, or there's, like, the temples that are pyramid-shaped. There's variation to how the pyramid is,
Mm-hmm.
but the actual, like, from bottom to top, has the same measurements, just different structures of that.
Yeah, the same shape. I mean, there's step pyramids, and then there's some pyramids which are
Exactly.
kind of like smooth walled all the way up, which
Hmm.
I feel like would be even harder to create. I don't know.
For sure.
Well, who
And
knows?
here
Because the
is a
step
picture
pyramids
of
are
all
so
the different
difficult.
countries' pyramids.
Oh yeah, we'll throw that up there, or Mike will throw that up there.
Yep. These are all the pyramids in the different countries.
Yeah,
The common pyramids.
yeah.
And
Imagine for
these are
United
the
States as a Bass
Mesoamericans.
Pro Shop.
So let's just talk about the timelines real quick for a second. So there is an overlap. There is an
Yes.
overlap between the two civilizations. But the one thing is, it's most of it is during like most of it's during the infancy, like the very infancy of the Mayan civilization. So like
Did the Egyptians come over and start
what
the Mayan
technology did
Empire?
they have back then?
Mm.
So that's
Wait.
another part of the theory. That's another theory that people have. They have either the Mayans went over there or the Egyptians came to them.
I like the Egyptian idea because, like, thinking about like hair, I feel like the hair looks very similar.
What?
Well,
What do you mean?
okay. Here's the reason why it makes a lot more sense for the Egyptians to go to the Mayans instead of vice versa.
Yeah.
Is if the Mayans go to the Egyptians post pyramid being built, you don't really learn much from that. If the Egyptians with the knowledge come to the Mayans with the knowledge of how exactly to build it, that makes a lot more sense.
Yeah. Well, the thing is, it's not completely post the pyramids being built. I don't know when the most recent pyramid built was, but I mean 2600 BC. That's just when the first ones were supposedly constructed. And again, all of these
Yeah.
timelines are very hard to base truth 100% on, because most of it is just
For sure.
hearsay, and
Yeah.
it's not really 100% definitive.
And it's also
I-
translated from a dead language.
Yeah. But
So you got to take it with a grain of salt.
one thing to think about is the Egyptians themselves predated themselves 30,000 years ago. Like in their texts, we say they were only around since 11,000 BC, so 13,000 years ago. They say they were around since like 30 BC. Or maybe
30,000
earlier.
BC.
Maybe earlier.
What about um, if the Egyptians, going on the idea of the Egyptians going over there and not the other way around? What
Mhm.
about if the Egyptians didn't go by sea, but they went by land, crossing the Bering Strait?
I don't think the Bering Strait was around during that time period.
Well, it would
That
just
would've-
have to
that-
freeze over like enough for
Yes,
them
that
to
that
make
would
it
have been
short trips. Plus, there's islands in between that would make it easy.
that would have been much earlier. Much earlier.
I
Yeah.
could see that being like potentially the case, and then it pushes back the timeline of Egyptians too.
My thing
And
is,
then it's just like they kind of like they had a group go and like conquest and then go like find new land to build,
Mhm.
and they eventually made their way all the way through North America, and then settling all the way down in South America too, and then kind of like straggling off
So we
in
can.
between North and Central and South.
I'm thinking we get into the reason I included the Younger Dryas theory is because I would like to go over that in a separate deep dive style video, because that is kind of what I wanted to bring up at the end of the video. But you already brought it up. Just predating ancient civilized civilization way farther than what we have it as. When they could have crossed that Bering Land Strait, and the actual knowledge of pyramid building could have been so much farther widespread across the entire world, and maybe that's why all the pyramids pop up on all the different continents, is because the knowledge was widespread enough and they were technologically advanced enough that it was as common as, say, a skyscraper is to us nowadays. You know?
Here's my question.
But I do like that. I do like where you're going with that.
Here's my question on... It's kind of a questioning the theory and pure chance, per se, basically. But take the Mayans, right? In their little boats.
Yep.
If the theory, or one of the theories, is that they traveled all the way across the Atlantic, through, like, the Nile system, went past all of those places that they would have seen before Egypt,
Mm-hmm.
why did they go through until they got to Egypt?
Yep. That is one of
That's
the
the
many
first one.
questions.
Yeah, the second question I have, and it kind of goes along with that, but on the opposite spectrum, if Egypt was going from Egypt and took the Bering Strait, okay, why go all the way through those countries, a whole continent you're going through, cross over, go south through an entire continent, 2 continents actually, because Central America,
Mm-hmm.
or yeah, that whole section right there, to go to South America, and then you just stop and plant there. Would there not, if they're looking for a specific type of, like, ecosystem or something, that would make sense?
Well, Mayans is on the Yucatan Peninsula, so that's Central America. So they would have only crossed through North America. But there are...
Is that the very bottom of Central?
But there are pyramidal structures in South America as well, so you could continue that theory. What I like about... So what you're saying with that theory, it is very, like, why would they do all that? But I do kind of like it, because in order to get around that way, they have to pass through so many different areas that do have pyramids now.
So that's another thing.
So they pass through all those areas, and then they make it down there, and then they have pyramids as well. So maybe as they were making that whole trek, they were passing along the knowledge of pyramid making through all of those different continents.
That was my only, like, somewhat
through
answer
Asia,
I had
through
for that
Europe,
question.
through
Was like,
North America,
did
Central,
they just
and then
stop,
South.
build a pyramid, or give them the details to build a pyramid, and then move on, stop, do the same thing, and just keep stopping everywhere? Because, I mean, that would make sense, but I guess that kind of disproves that it's just the Mayans linked with them.
Yep. The thing is, it's all linked. And the one thing that almost makes it hard for that theory as well is there are pyramids in... We're forgetting about a continent, Oceania, which is basically all, like, the Polynesian islands, Australia
in that area,
New Zealand, all those different areas. I think Easter Island is one with pyramids in it, on it. How'd they get there? That one would be the most difficult to get to, is the pyramids that are in Oceania.
Yeah.
Or Oceania. I don't know how to say it. I think Oceania. Oceania.
No, you're saying this for the
Oceania?
the Egyptians.
Yeah,
going
Oceania.
around, right?
Yes.
What'd you say, Kyle?
So, it, like, the big thing too is, like, I was, like, looking back to, like, or searching to, like, figure out, okay, what kind of ships do Egyptians have back then? Because I've seen in, like, movies they've had some fairly large ships, and it's called the Khufu ship, which would have been around the timeline of, I think it was 2500.
And the Khufu ship was big, but it, again, was not... Like, you think about the other big things they're doing, like the pyramids, the boat in comparison is tiny.
Right, it is, but it is very similar to the style of like Viking boats were too, and the Vikings were known to be in almost every continent as well.
Mm-hmm.
But
They
let me
made their
put it
way
like
around
this.
a
Let me put
lot.
it like this though.
They were a
right?
lot later though. They already had so much of the
Yeah.
world mapped out.
Like
That's true.
the one thing that I'll say about like boat travel also is like you look at this ship, probably 9 out of 10 long ship travels, those dudes were never seen again.
Yeah, probably so.
Mhm.
No, yeah, definitely not.
So
The
they had
ancestors
to
of
have
them
sent,
A bunch of
if that's
fleets.
the case, they had to have sent so many different boats to try to get it. It's not, I mean, hey, you could get it first try and get lucky. I'm not
For
saying
sure.
that's not impossible, but I'm saying it's very unlikely for a rowboat to get across like all that.
True. It was technically
Especially
a
the Mayan one.
sailboat
The Mayan
too,
one
though.
just doesn't make sense.
Yeah.
That their boat systems just
Now
wouldn't.
I got
The biggest
I got
issue,
an idea.
definitely the biggest issue I have with the Mayans traveling to Egypt theory is the boats.
Yeah, I would agree, 100%.
Mhm.
And then that's why I was gonna bring up too is what about if all of these locations all had a mutual friend?
Like
Yeah,
aliens?
Kind of see exactly, and that was kind of a little bit in that video too that we had, is that they had like a strange figure on the hieroglyphs as
Yeah.
well
Mm,
that matched the Egyptian one. That both just don't make any sense on why they have that there.
yeah.
There's even been old Mayan or Aztec toys or like trinkets. One was shaped as a plane. There is one that you can find that's like in gold that we have currently. I don't know if it probably should be in a museum if it isn't, but it's literally shaped like a plane that we made in the 1900s, for example, literally shaped a similar way. So it makes you wonder if they had some sort of
I pull up the
knowledge
pic.
in aerodynamics and stuff like that when it comes to flying or anything, or like I said, maybe the mutual friend.
Mm-hmm.
You know, if all of these pyramids are per se lining up so well with a star, how did they get so technologically advanced to get a mathematical equation down exactly to
Here's
that
my
point?
rebuttal to that. If they all had the same exact friend guiding them, why would they build it all differently?
Their own interpretation, the
But if it's the same exact friend telling them the
The-
same exact way,
Yeah.
the type of material available too.
it's not like
I guess
they just
just
speak
cultural
their language. It's kind of like a
and
universal
material.
thing, you know?
It must be
I would
just
say-
be
I would
cultural and
say it's-
material then.
I would say culture and material, and it's not to say that the aliens are like you have to do it this way. It's more so of like this is
Hey, here's
this
an
is
idea.
what we're doing. Yeah,
What
make
What do you
this.
think it is?
I think it's culture and material.
Okay.
Um,
I like that theory.
yeah.
Let me say something real quick. So, the reason we started this fact or fiction question was because it was a weird video of a dude, and he was showing us that there was apparently Mayan text in Egyptian. I don't know. I don't remember if it was catacombs or some sort of tomb or just random hallway in a pyramid or something like that. And he said it was Mayan text. He said this is not Egyptian hieroglyphs carved into Egyptian pyramids or whatever. And we said we couldn't tell if this is fact or fiction because we didn't know anything about either. I mean, we knew some about the Egyptians and stuff like that and Mayans and stuff, but we didn't know
Here's a
like the
picture of
facts.
the hieroglyphs on top of the pyramid.
No, we couldn't find the picture.
What do you mean? You can just
No,
Google
of the
picture
Mayan
it.
ones.
No, I know. I'm saying here's
Oh.
the hieroglyphs above the pyramids.
Oh, okay, sure, yeah. Anyways,
And here's Mayan hieroglyphs,
yeah.
Mayan text.
Okay, yeah, we'll
They're
we'll show
different.
those two different ones. But anyways, quite obviously different, probably. If we looked at them, I was going to compare and contrast them, but based off the information that we have laid out to us, can we make a consensus on whether it is fact or fiction? Just the theory that the Mayans went over there. Because also, I believe in that video, the dude said something about Egyptians' texts saying something about people crossing over or river people from across the way, and that's why he thought the Mayans were the river people from across the way that made their way over to them.
Do I think
Did the Mayans make their way over
over
to the
there?
Egyptian?
I think that's fiction.
Okay.
Do I think the Egyptians came this way? I think that could be fact.
I would have to agree with that.
Yeah,
I think kind of like what Kyle brought up with the Bering Strait is they probably stopped along the way and just told everyone of their grand idea, and everyone said, "That sounds great." Built their own pyramid. Like, they just told them the dimensions, not how to build it.
Yeah.
And that's why everyone built it separately.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, for me, I would say I'm kind of like with Bryson on like the opposite way around is more factual than the other side being more factual. And God, I lost my train of thought for a second now. Fuck.
I think when you take it like the infancy of the Mayans, I don't think they're going to be advanced enough to get over there.
Yeah.
But if you take where the Egyptians were at that time, that's like peak.
Yeah.
They can get over there.
They can do a lot of things during that time.
That's why I think the Egyptians, I think they probably went. I think the Egyptians probably explored the entire world.
Mm-hmm. They can do a lot.
Yeah.
Except for...
I do not think the Mayans were that advanced at that time.
Macedonians.
Yeah, going back to recent history too, like if we just look at the Spaniards and the English just all going and expanding and being conquistadors and stuff, we could probably assume that any other civilizations probably had been doing the same thing if they became a big civilization. I could only assume that they're sending groups out to go and expand, to go out and find new lands, to start over here, start a new place. And, you know, that's going to take lots of time. Mm-hmm. So if you don't have like a good writing or anything like that, or like a good way to like store history and stuff, maybe all of that historical context can change over generations. So maybe the pyramids don't look the same in other places of the world because they're generations behind of where the original pyramids began. And of course, the material that's present there in those areas could make it potentially hard to make the same exact thing. So they might be like, okay, well, this is how we're going to interpret it over here. And anyone who were to come over here from our place were to see something like this that is a pyramid-like form, they would think, hey, we know them.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, it's just kind of based on the theory of, like, they just had the dimensions. They didn't have how to build it, per se. So it's like, they were like, we're going to build, say, like, the Mayans, the Aztecs, all those guys, the Native Americans are like, we're going to build these as, like, step-up temples.
Mm-hmm.
But have that same pyramid aspect to it.
Yeah.
Whereas the Egyptians were like, we're going to use these as tombs or whatever, you know, we're going to store things in here for years to come. And then you just have it like that.
Mm-hmm.
Yes.
So,
yeah,
I think we concluded. We had a pretty good conclusion. And I think that was a very conclusive episode to say that the Mayans did not go over to Egypt. That was a silly theory,
Mayans
and that
were
was
capping by that.
a silly man who thought of that.
Yep.
All
Any
right.
Or
Mayan
could
who
have
said
just
you did that, you're lying.
misinterpreted.
Or he could have misinterpreted it, yeah.
Yeah, and it could have been the other way, in which case, fact.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And that's been another episode of the Daily Horror Cast.
Peace.